item anymore. So it could be less expensive, it could be more achievable. I mean, it's a new world that is opening up, but I think we're still kind of far away.
Any other comments from our panelists? Last comment here.
Maybe about also generation. I think we actually just talked about that when we were downstairs. Like I do think that also like Web3 or digital first like experience will really catch up when the Gen Z becomes like the main force of this society, and that will be the time that they not only want it but they demand it, and I think it will come very soon in a few years. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dan, Julia, Francesca, and Stefano.
Thank you.
Hopefully all new friends. Hopefully next year we'll have partnerships announced between all of them. We'll get ready for the next presentation, and we will. We've got I think we have 2 last talks, then the keynote with Carlos Cashman, and then we'll have a tour. We have 3 more? We have 3 more talks. Really? Okay, wow. I need to change out of my mic, and we'll be back in 1 second with the ILI presentation. Oh, we have Future of Learning now, then ILI, and then Digital Assets, and then the Cashman. Okay, I'll be right back. So our next panel is the Future of Learning, and our next panel is the Future of Learning. I would like to introduce to the stage Nicolas Gauthier from New Education. Sorry, I've got the wrong animation here. Let me just push it forward. Nicolas Gauthier from New. We have Diego De Nicola from the School of Tomorrow. And we have Simon Crawford Ash, who flew in all the way from San Francisco to be here. And excited for this panel presentation. I'll let you guys get started.
Thank you. We're going to try to keep into the allocated time slot, which means we have about 1 hour and 20 minutes of this talk. Jokes aside, we have 25 minutes to speak about the future of learning, which for 25 minutes is a very condensed session that we need to get through. My name is Nick Gauthier. I'm an entrepreneur and investor into forward-thinking educational businesses. And by my side, I have Simon, who has done 2 exits and is very much interested into higher learning and how those fit into organizational models. And my colleague over here, Diego, who runs the School of Tomorrow, a project-based school, or the future of school, the School of Tomorrow. Also, a little side note, he runs Ironmans and qualified for the Hawaiian Ironman, so big up to him. If you guys want to do a little bit of sport tomorrow, he's going to have a leisurely workout, which means swimming across the lagoon and a quick bike ride to Milan. Great. So I just probably going to dive into it straight away. Education. There's the old saying which says, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And we are here, I guess, today in the educational space where you have 21st century students, you have 20th century teachers, and they're all using 19th century methods. How do we get there, Simon?
Yeah, I think the history of education is kind of interesting because a lot of people, I mean, I was fascinated to learn that the modern school system at least started in Prussia. It's like late 18th century. And at that time, I think it fit the world really well because there was a lot of war and there was a deliberate attempt to homogenize society and make it more structured, more people have the same mental model of the world, the same ideals, the same values. And, you know, arguably it kind of worked. I mean, over those hundreds of years as that model went global, we have got to a level of peace that's far, you know, surpasses anything humanity's achieved in the past. So maybe, you know, maybe it kind of worked. But has it now, achieved the same outcomes it needs to into the future? Is the needs of the world different compared to late 18th century? Obviously yes.
How's that tally up with yourself, Diego, with your own school of tomorrow approach?
Well, I would say one of the key questions that we asked ourselves, and that I think we need to ask ourselves going forward with education, is what problem do we want to solve, and what's the actual purpose of a school? Because I think we've just all grown up going to school, and we're used to going to school, and so the question is, do we even need a school going forward? And I would say one of the things that we've identified that has shifted most significantly is that back in the day, schools were absolutely necessary because they were kind of the source of knowledge. Like, you had to go there because there was no other place where you could get that kind of information. Nowadays, we don't really see the schools or the teachers as the main or the primary source of knowledge, but rather we should transform that into kind of a learning environment. And there's one anecdote that I always remember from my dad. He was an immigrant to Switzerland from Italy, and he wanted to learn German. So he was writing down some of the words that he heard because he got access to the library on a Wednesday afternoon for half an hour, only once a week. And that was his only source to go and look up in a dictionary what that word actually meant. So that was the reality in the 50s. Nowadays, we're living in a completely different world. So therefore, we need to rethink the entire system.
Seems like a big challenge.
Definitely.
Yeah. And when you look at the unconventional models of school, we're obviously looking at the kind of the future of education and where it needs to go to, kind of exploring a bit where we've come from, why we're in this. How do you see the future? How does the future look like of schooling? If we take into account the current structure, which is very much somebody stands up front, somebody talks to people, mostly smaller people, they learn, they listen, they learn by heart. How's that changing in your view, Diego?
Well, I would say the main difference is that back in the day, you kind of had a predefined kind of way to say, like, this is our shape. Like, you either fit in here or you don't. And if you do fit in here, then you can progress and you can go through the entire system. And all kind of like the outcasts, the ones that fell through the cracks, they just didn't make it because we wanted this type of person to make it through, as Simon was also saying before. And I think what changed nowadays is that there's no one fixed path to success. And so I would say the key word here is really individualized, but individualized also in a personalized kind of way. So I feel like there should no longer be one school path, one way to go through education, because if you do that, your end product will effectively be people that think the same way, that act the same way. And if there's one thing that we've learned over the last 5, 10, 15 years with the rise of technology, with AI, with everything else, is that if we want to stay relevant as a human being, we have to specialize, we have to be different, we have to embark on paths that cannot be just substituted by any other machine that can think or act in a certain specific way. So that's, I think, the main change that we have to do.
Yeah, I mean, to riff on that, I think what's really fascinating is that, people are inherently unique, right, of course, and people are also molded by the environment they're in, right, nature and nurture. Yeah. And I don't think there's enough conversation at the moment. I mean, we know that there's criticisms of the existing school system. A lot of knowledge that we learn is old, it's hard to keep things up to date, blah, blah, blah. But I think it goes beyond that, because the very nature of the way that the education system, both in primary, high school, and university, is structured, is it has a few fundamental premises, and it all comes from these very old systems for a different era. And to take a couple of them that I think are particularly important, like one is there is an authority, and you learn from the authority, right? And so that has a lot of implications in the way that humans are shaped, right? It naturally encourages people to seek an answer from someone outside themselves. It takes away self-motivation for inquiry, for understanding what the direction is that you want to take. And I believe arguably then influences things like that we see in the world today, where people are now placed in an environment where careers don't last your whole life. You don't just, I mean, if you rewind back, people used to live where, my father was a blacksmith, right? So I will be a blacksmith. The level of social mobility was shockingly low. The need for a decision around what type of career to make, what to do, didn't really exist, right? So arguably the school system was fantastically appropriate for the time. Now we have kids growing up that all we know is that they're going to have 10 different careers. We don't really know what they even are going to be yet. They probably haven't been invented. Yeah. And are we teaching the skills, these higher cognitive capabilities that allow evaluation, decision-making, self-understanding, navigating through these? Are we teaching those skills? And if your whole model is structured around there is an authority and go ask them for the answer, then what we're teaching people is that the way to answer this is to, maybe look to your peers, look what society's doing, and what do we see in the world today, funnily enough, like an epidemic of these kind of things. Yeah. And consequently also, mental health crises and massive rates of dissatisfaction in work and, an inability to navigate these things, because I don't think the people are at fault and I don't think society is at fault. I mean, it is what it is and it's going to be the way it is. I just don't think we're equipping people appropriately to be able to thrive in a modern environment, because we're imprinting them and conditioning them in the wrong direction for a modern world.
And if I may just add to that, you started by saying if it's not broken, you shouldn't fix it. But I don't know about you guys, but if you think, when I graduated from university, from college, I always thought, okay, once you graduate, you kind of know where you go and you have a certain type of knowledge that you can apply right away. And if there's one constant that I've seen, or the answer that I've gotten from everyone that I've asked after college going into like a real job, was I wasn't prepared for a real job, or I wasn't prepared for real life. And I feel like this is such a constant that maybe we should really ask ourselves, is it really not broken? Because I feel like it is, we just haven't realized it. It's like your car, your engine doesn't really work anymore, but the flashlight is not on yet, so you keep going because you think you're going to be fine, but you're not. So I think we're at that stage now.
I mean, can I riff again? I was just chatting with someone recently, and you reflect on these things, you get a slightly different perspective on it, and it just blows your mind all over again. Think about most people coming out of, let's say they have an extremely successful education trajectory. They go through all of high school, they go to a top tier university, they do amazingly well, they get a job at some top company, maybe it's in anything, any white collar job. And often what they're then asked to do is extremely menial, pretty
On top of that, yeah.
basic tasks which they hate. What does that say about the accumulation of all of this human achievement, prosperity, wealth, education, institution development, 15 years of training, and they essentially processing information around and shuffling some very menial jobs? That's the output of the system. It says something about how well it's preparing people for meaningful work.
So where's it going from there? I mean, obviously we don't all be shuffling meaningless information around or photocopying or whatever it is that we used to do or still do in the future. Where is it going? I mean, I know you're trying to address, breaking down the whole system is pretty difficult, right?
Well, one big fear that I feel people always address is like, well, AI is taking over the world, computers and robots will replace us, we're going to become irrelevant. Well, I think there's one important factor that we have to consider is that robots will replace the kind of tasks that we don't want to do, not the kind of tasks that we will always want to do ourselves. So it is practical, and I do think that a lot of jobs will not exist in the future that do exist today. I mean, some studies show that the more or less the number that they think is between 80 and 90% of jobs that our kids or our grandkids will haven't even been invented yet. That's kind of the prediction that they have. But so the inherent question that's at stake here is, where do we go from there, and what do we change in order to provide an environment that will be useful for the future? And I think that's not that easy. It's a philosophical question in some sense, and if I don't know, maybe we want to try and narrow that one down a little bit. But
yeah, absolutely. So I mean, the question, of course, is it's quite easy to say like what's broken, what's not,
right,
how do you fix
exactly.
it. Obviously, there is an element of the perception of people, certain myths that need to be broken down, right? You look at alternative schooling, a lot of people think about a lot of different things, everything from hugging trees, which hugging trees is absolutely fantastic, down to more alternative learning mechanisms. But is there a step that we need to do before we can even get to a place where we can change, or are we there already?
Well, I think there's a few themes of people that are experimenting in alternative education, which I think is awesome. Though I think, it's great that we have more awareness around the problems is important to motivate people to try and think about something new. Because this is so deeply entrenched in the habits of our life that most people aren't even contemplating, should we do education differently? But there are people that are, and certainly one big theme, and I know, your school is on this and a bunch of others, but to me, this first paradigm that needs to be broken, and there's a bunch more, but if I'd pick two things, one is, the authority has the answer, right? And that stems through a whole bunch of principles. Like that's almost an axiom of the modern education system, right? And the second one is, there is a sequence of knowledge that we need to take you from A to B, right? And it's obviously, these are all cliches now, we know it, but we're taking a whole bunch of people, we're saying, you are at A, which of course they're not, like we're lucky if one person is actually at A, everyone else is over some spectrum, right? And you're all going to B, oh no, we'll give you choice, you can choose between 6 different specialties, right? But like that encompasses the diversity of humanity, right? And so those two paradigms have a whole bunch of ramifications when you think through it in terms of the psychology, the character development, the motivation, all of these qualities which are necessary to thrive in modern life, in my opinion, and many others. And so there's a bunch of schools that are doing something different, and they're saying, well, maybe to flip that, if we instead had the priority for the whole structure of this school being driven around, we believe that the individual, is capable. What they need is the ability to navigate to something that they find interesting, because if they have interest and motivation, they're probably going to get good at it, right? I guess this is one of the first premises, which I think is a helpful one. Obviously, people have a whole range of different abilities, but I think generally the way that our existing mental model, mostly informed by our education system, says that we kind of rank everything in a very linear way. I don't think that's so appropriate. I think that really what we should be looking for is how does each individual get the most potential out of them? And that's going to be where they're interested in, right? So therefore, we need to redesign an education system that is based on that, right? So
how do you quantify that then? I think that's one of the big issues, right? Is where people are grown up over centuries, frankly, where you are ranked, you are quantified, etc. And all these new educational models where you're saying, well, actually, no, we're not doing that anymore. What does it look like?
Well, I think we should do that.
I also think so. I mean, without getting too philosophical, I think we're always trying to answer the question of what does it take to become successful? And nobody addresses what does it become, or what do you need to become fulfilled in life. And I think that's often the big misconception. So we're all chasing after this kind of success because we kind of mistake it for fulfillment. And I think what we're ultimately after in life, and I think everybody agrees here, is, I mean, if you have success without fulfillment, it's useless. So I think what we're doing in schools, and even good schools by any means, they might prepare you to be successful by the terms that we have defined up until today, but they do not prepare you to be fulfilled. And so I see a lot of people that they make a lot of money, they create huge companies, they have an impact and all of that, but they're miserable. So this starts a lot of times during the years of schooling. And so when we embarked on this journey, which for me was completely new, I tried to ask the question from a different perspective. So not what do we need to change about the current school system, but kind of like if we could reinvent school, and we would reinvent the school in 2020, 2021, that's when we started thinking about that more concisely. How would we found that? How would a school founded today, started from scratch, look like? And so we removed all the stigmas that we had before, and we started analyzing why is it even like that? And just to give you one anecdote, I don't know if you guys know why we even have this 45-minute lecture. It's some of the things you touched on before. But this is also one of these relics from the Prussian time, because they realized 45 minutes is long enough to kind of inculcate an idea, but it's short enough that nobody will actually start to question. And therefore, if that's the basis you build your school on, I think you guys agree with me, that's not really where we want to go with our own kids. And therefore, starting from that, we said, okay, why does everyone have vacation at the same time? We removed vacations. We said, you have flexible vacations. You pick your vacations when you want. We have flexible hours. You can start early. If you're an early bird, you can start later. If not, we have individualized learning. We have mixed age classes. We have mentors, and we have people teaching kids who are coming from the industry. We have programmers, musicians, actors, everything, because otherwise you only have, and we're back at the authority, you have the one teacher that's supposed to be the know-it-all. He cannot cover all of the subjects we have, and you don't get an education the way it should be. And so throwing all of these things and lots of other things, we just went out there and we said, let's try if it works. And 3 years later, we can say it's been working amazingly already. Obviously, we don't have kind of like a set that we can say we've been doing this for 20 years, but I believe that this method works for now, and in 5 years it has to be revolutionized again, because the world is changing. No. But we have to start somewhere. So.
And just quickly, how do you, technology, AI,
yes.
How do you see that? Does this kind of help you feed into it?
I think it doesn't work without it. That's why. And I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean,
that's why we can be
if we pull out some of the principles that a lot of these alternative takes are doing, I think there's a lot of common themes. And one is to say, let's put more of the accountability onto the students, right? Instead of just telling them the answer, telling them what they have to do. Like some go as far as the Acton Academy, which is a school network that's growing really rapidly. Teachers don't give any answers. Everything they put back on the students. Research it yourself, figure it out. What do you want to do, right? Very interesting idea, right? But they're trying to put accountability on the students. 2, project-driven. Instead of a list of abstract bits of knowledge, we say, okay, let's do something, let's create something that immediately pushes us into higher cognitive powers. We're doing some application, we're doing some analysis, we're doing some synthesis. And then being able to choose those projects yourself, having some self-directed autonomy around it, which then, of course, ties in more of the natural motivation. It brings in, again, these higher level, because, what are we most interested in? Typically ourselves. So, therefore, if we have to make a decision about something we're motivated in, something about my life is probably going to pull the strings, right? So if we have those principles, what we end up with something is extremely individualized. And I think the reason why this hasn't been possible until now is because we haven't had the technology to enable that. Correct. I mean, arguably, the aristocratic tutoring system, where one wealthy person had half a dozen, exceptional academics that would tutor the one individual, created exceptional outcomes, maybe the highest rate of geniuses that we've had. Amazing. But it's not very equitable, right? So we don't want that in today's society. Yeah. But we want to replicate those principles. Well, how are we going to do that? Well, we need technology, and particularly, I think, the LLMs that have been, emerged right now, if we think of those as a communication, synthesis, and reasoning engine that allows us to extremely well individualize. Not using it as an encyclopedia, which I think a lot of people are mistakenly doing. Not using it as the answer or the new authority to turn to, which is obviously undermining the principles we want in education. But instead, we bake some kind of framework around it. What we're experimenting with in this new higher ed model is, assessment, discovery, selection of project, and deliver it. And that just cycles, right?
Amazing. Thanks a lot for that fascinating summary, a very little small glimpse of a very long topic. I don't know if there's anybody here in the student body that'd like to ask our professor something. We've got to be a good one. Yeah.
All right.
It's you.
No pressure.
Nodding violently when you were saying like tutoring and one-on-one tutoring is one of the proven ways to improve education. There has been a lot of just ideas on how to improve education which are totally disconnected from actual results. One of the things we know today is how to make money, which is gamification. Duolingo is a very successful money-making machine. No one is learning any languages out of Duolingo.
I was hoping you were going to point that out.
One interesting opportunity today is that with AI, there is the ability to give every student an individual tutor. Exactly. And that we know works.
Yes.
What else works? Because one of the problems with innovation in education is that we have a lot of ideas, and if we are in this room, we are all strong individualists, and we love like how unique we are and how special we are, etc. But you need to create an education system for the entire world, no? What else works other than tutoring?
Well, if I may add to that, which, by the way, I think is fascinatingly interesting, this topic, and we probably need another hour for this, but I'm going to try to keep it to a minute.
Gabriel's going to give it to us.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, Gabriel.
Yes, exactly. So when that was exactly the problem that we had with our school, because we had the possibility for tutoring, but we didn't have the material for that. So when AI comes in, AI can effectively replace the tedious task of teachers without putting teachers out of a job. Quite the opposite. The majority of teachers, they wanted to leave their jobs because of this repetitiveness. And now they have the amazing possibility that AI takes over the repetitiveness much better than anyone else could, because they create customized material. And finally, the teacher can be there as a person to really be there for all of these personalized knowledge that we want to acquire, whether it is, public speaking or learning about how to solve a problem, or, all of the things that we don't learn in a regular school system right now. So therefore, I think it's a basis that we need to build on in order to create a system that will work worldwide. And I think it really does, and it will make the playing field much more even for everyone.
Tutoring, mentoring.
Can I give my sentence answer?
One sentence.
I won't get carried away. Too much passion on this topic.
Right. Way too much.
I'm not sure we need a lot more. I think we just need to appreciate the fact that tutoring is the answer. We just need to scale it, right? And it's only just now that we've had the technology to be able to scale tutoring. And so now I think where we also need to push some innovation is new institutional structures and new facilitation models that allow us to take that one-on-one experience and actually create then the social environment, the assessment environment, all these sorts of things which become secondary to this one-on-one tutoring environment. And we have that you know, and we can say so much more, but like scaling that model up into a big institution that still has all of the good bits of the existing models, scalability, global, status, recognition, all the things that we need to be able to move through life and get the signaling that you also need from education, the socialization, etc. But at the heart of it is this one-on-one tutoring, individualized concept, putting the accountability on the individual, so on. And I think we can now do that, but only very recently.
Right,
But half a sentence, our mindset need to change, because if the mindset doesn't change, then we're not ready to change the structure.
Then we can't embrace these new paradigm and
Exactly.
these new principles that we need to build it on.
Correct.
fantastic. Thank you so much, guys, for this very long discussion. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you. Sorry, Gabriel.
I'd like to introduce, so we're actually going to have a fun session on AI and coffee. Not to say that any of the other sessions were not fun, they were all fun. But this one's a little bit more interactive. I'd like to introduce Luca Torello from Illy Cafe. I'm going to get him in the other room. I'll be right back because we're bringing in some coffee to taste. I think he's coming. I think he'll be here in a second. Oh, he's on the other side. Okay, well, hold on one second, because does anybody want coffee? Vocally say you want coffee. Does anybody want coffee? Say yes. Does anybody want coffee? Saying twice? Twice? Second time yes? Third time? Okay, awesome. Let me get Luca. 1 second. Luca is here in the building. We're gonna try to make this a fast session, and it's all about courage and curiosity here, but also the title of this panel, this conversation was I'd like some AI with my coffee. So now we've got wonderful Illy coffee, but before we even get to the AI component of it, let's make sure this is working. Hello, hello. There we go.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what we're drinking, Luca?
Yeah. So you're drinking coffee that is not only coffee. It is a regenerative coffee because it is going to regenerate your brain as the coffee do, but it was produced with the regenerative agriculture practices. What is regenerative agriculture? Is the way to do agriculture thinking first in what I have to regenerate. The soil, the biodiversity, the social impact, this is the point. And how is it linked with artificial intelligence, Gabriel?
So
I don't know. You are the
I don't
one
know.
who
I don't know.
requested me the answer.
No. I was asking you the question. How does it actually relate to AI? I was reading, in our conversation we had with Moreno, who was here last year, and on the phone, it was the University of Coffee professor. We're discussing AI, and you're the head agronomist at Illy. Really, actually, how does AI change the lives of the producers of coffee, to the supply chain, to the end product?
Yeah, it's important to understand that we are a food company, roaster, so we are like a coin with two faces. One is devoted to coffee consumers, and there the artificial intelligence is IoT. Is IoT applied to the coffee machines? That one that gather the information, when the coffee is drink, how much is drinking, is it related to what traffic, the traffic is related to the weather, the seasonality and this and that. Let us to understand where to invest, where to put the retail in this and that, okay? And this is the part that is well known.
Yeah.
What is the other side is the side of the supply chain. And there is a lot of room to develop. Because artificial intelligence in agriculture is not so used. And I want to tell you why. May I?
Yeah, tell us why. I also want some of the,
you are...
where's my Illy coffee? I'm waiting for some coffee. We got to get... Veronica? No. Let me at least have the cup. Okay. I want to make sure I hold the cup while we're doing this. But why is this important?
Yeah. Who is dealing with artificial intelligence, by my point of view, should see the agribusiness as a possibility to invest, because there is a lot of things to do. Coffee is well known as one of the soft commodities, except the oil and energy. The other are food ingredients, like cocoa, like coffee, like rice, like corn. What is the difference?
Grazie mille.
So I put from one side what is soya, what is corn, what is wheat, and the other side, thank you, what is coffee, what is cocoa, what is rubber. What is the difference? The difference is between an annual production, soya from when you seed it and when you harvest, it takes 6 months, and perennial production. Coffee needs 3 years from the seedling to the first production, then
So
it
36 months?
has last.
So it's basically 36 months, right?
Yeah.
Until we get into
Just
our hands,
to
or
have,
no?
just to have the first coffee. And then the plantation should last 15 years. And is it only this the difference? The difference is then in the risk appetite of the farmer. I take a decision today for the next 20 years. It's like a marriage. These are perennial crops. Versus I go faster and I want to produce cereals. Okay, artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is applied in annual crops because huge land, open, so satellite can read all the variables and communicate those variables to what? To the machines, variable rate machines, that then put a little bit of fertilizer here, less there, and this is precision farming. Is it possible to do in the perennial crops? Not yet. Why not yet? Because it's not sufficient to have the satellite data. Why? Do you think that the temperature is the same outside the crown of the tree or inside the crown of the tree?
No.
So, satellite is not enough. This is just a brief example to say what? That there is a lot of room to invest in technology, as in sensors, as in machines.
And is Illy investing in some of this technology or partnering mostly with people that are doing this AI technology?
Of course, we are investing in it, okay?
Does anybody have any ideas here to pitch? Luke, I'm kidding. Really, you can pitch some ideas, actually.
Okay, so then how this is applied to regenerative agriculture? What is regenerative agriculture? Just to compare, the agriculture with medicine or the human health. Years 70s, 80s, we eat what we had in the plate. Drinking what we wanted to drink. If something happened, go to the hospital. This is conventional agriculture. Put fertilizer, fumigations, that's it. No, we want to be healthy. We are all biohackers. We want to be fit. We want to eat good food and prevent any disease, just in case to go to the hospital. This is regenerative agriculture.
So from the standpoint of, for Illy and for the coffee that we're drinking, and this is probably my last question that I'm interested in, is as we drink this coffee, and I'm assuming there wasn't much AI involved with this because it took 36 months to get here, will AI support in the future for Illy coffee to have the taste be the same across, even if it's different agricultural, the crops, etc. Like, will it help influence the taste in the future, or no? Is that stays the same? So from a supply chain, from a technical standpoint.
The taste is quite tricky because it depends by the taster. So I am used to drink this coffee and I recognize all the attributes of this coffee. So taste, I think that Illy Cafe tastes good enough. It's not the point then to find different tastes. This could be a niche, could be a side market, okay? The point is that conventional agriculture is at its ends. chemicals are not working as before, because we have spoiled agriculture from the biodiversity. And so, look, the same in the medicine, bacterial resistance to antibiotics, the same in agriculture. So, we have to change. To change, regenerative agriculture is the solution, yes, but, and here is the point of artificial intelligence. If any beetle could fly 2 kilometers in order to maintain the populations of the enemies and the enemies of the enemies, that is the way to reduce the use of pesticides, is it possible then to do it in a farm of 1 hectare? If a beetle can fly 2 kilometers? No, this is the point. This is the point. We have to go out the scheme of farm management and enter in territory management. Is the territory, is all of you. If you are a piece of land, I can see you as a piece of land with 30, 40 owners, or I can see each one of you. In regenerative agriculture, I should see the ecosystem, because I have to manage the ecosystem. And how to manage the ecosystem? Here is where artificial intelligence is needed. To do the right interpretation of the sensors, to organize the operations, to organize when to apply fertilizer, to organize when to go to harvest. And why is important this? Also because there are a lack of labor in the coffee. Consider that in the North Guatemala, Huehuetenango, we bought 10 years ago the best coffee in the world. Super! Nowadays, no coffee in Huehuetenango because there are no harvesters. Emigration to the United States. Millions of Latin Americans has migrated in the United States. Remittances. Remittances account for 17% of the GDP of Latin America countries. No way to find people to go to the plantation to pick the coffee. This is the point. So the problem, Gabriel, just to go end, is not to have a better taste, is to have the same taste and to save the coffee.
That makes complete sense, and will only happen through artificial intelligence, as we're all being told, because as we spoke earlier on the first panel, we discussed how artificial intelligence are going to be displacing certain jobs, but from this conversation that we just had, this talk, it actually could support and replace the jobs on the coffee plantations.
And it's more, because it was time when it is the son that learn how to do from the father and from the grandfather. Nowadays, it's not like this, and what was the tradition received by the father should be provided by artificial intelligence. So everyone
it's scary
can
to think about, but it's possible.
Yes, this is possible.
I mean, we just had the
Is
panel
it
on the
possible
future of
because
learning.
it is called a decision supporting system. What you learn from the father, when to apply, the right moment where to apply a biostimulant. This could be in your app if there is the research behind this. What it is this limitation? That everyone think about the farm, not about the territory. We have to manage the ecosystem because the beetle flies 2 kilometers. Okay?
Luca, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We have one question. Okay, Ashton, one question. Make it really quick because we got to get everybody out of here.
My question is, you're speaking about regeneration a lot. I'm curious what regenerative methodologies you're actually applying on these farms, like what actual methods, and applying that on a mass scale.
Yeah, ancient methods as adding compost, cover crops, And this is what it is still know. Innovation. Innovation are biostimulants and microorganisms. Apply microorganisms at the edaphic stage and in the soil. So we combine the tradition with the innovation. From here, we have the certainty to have, for example, the same quantities, the same yields, and from microbiology and biostimuli, we are investigating how to do a coffee plantation with 0 chemicals. This is this is the coffee you have tasted, and this one is the coffee that needs 10 years more. Stay tuned.
Luca, thank you so much. Illy's been a proud supporter and sponsor of Techtalia for the last 3 years. We're wonderfully gifted Illy bags and coffee today from Brazil. Sustainably regenerative coffee from Brazil. Thank you so much, Luca. And
thank you, Gabriel.
We really, really appreciate Illy's support at Techtalia. And thank you.
Thank you.
So we have our next panel that will be set up shortly, right before Carlos is going on as our keynote. I said it to him like 50 times. I'm really excited for our conversation, but I am. And this next panel is on digital assets. We had to switch around a little bit because, unfortunately, their physical train had like a malfunction earlier. So I'm going to quickly make these introductions, and we will get this panel going. 1 second here. Jeez. I'd like to welcome to the stage Nick Mayer, who's the moderator of this panel, Chinyadi, who's the CEO of Mara, who flew all the way in from Nigeria. I'd like to introduce Francesco Boni from Art Squared, flew in from London to be here, and Stefan Gabon, who is from Young Platform, and both Stefan and Francesco are sponsors. Let's get this panel started.
Yeah, woo! It feels loud in my thinking organ. Hi, I'm not entirely sure what this panel's about, but my panelists will tell me, hopefully, I'm sure. We are going to keep it quick because it's our job as the last panel to open for Carlos Cashman, who's a lot more interesting than we are. Love you, bro. Also, we have some different accents in here. Chi's voice is just like the most sultry voice in the world, so I'm going to try to channel that right now. Anyway, who are you guys? And do you have a challenge of the one-sentence elevator pitch? If there's a period, I'll just like buzz you a little bit. And there's no investors in the room, so you can be completely relaxed. Stefan?
Super relaxed.
Yeah, we'll start with you,
Perfect.
because you're the youngest.
So, Young Platform is the biggest crypto exchange in Italy, with over 2 million users registered, focused on education and compliance.
That was quick.
It's quick?
That was good.
Quick enough.
And why do you wish you were an AI company?
We're not looking for AI.
Yeah, that's what they'll say.
You said that on the record.
Exactly.
Wow. That's
yeah,
brave.
Yeah. Well, he was crossing his fingers behind his back. All right,
Exactly.
let's go. We got 7 minutes left.
Okay.
Sorry, I know it's my fault.
So R-Square is a fractional investment platform that allows you to buy shares of blue chip art and collectibles. So you can invest in art the same way you invest in stocks on the financial market.
How many users do you have?
We have around 15,000 users.
That's so many more than anybody else has. That's cool. I mean, less than you, but that's pretty cool.
Less than him as well, man.
He's
was
just
not
going
a
to
good
brag backstage every 2 seconds. He's like, look, 1, I've had a lot of coffee. We don't have a lot of coffee in Nigeria. I got to go to the bathroom so badly. And 2, I have 4.7 million users. Anyway, your turn.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chi Nadi. I'm the CEO founder of Mara. You can call us a Coinbase of Africa. What that means is we're a financial super wallet built on our own chain, our own layer 2. We launched December of last year. We at launch with 3.8 million verified users, and now we've grown to 4.7 million. Yeah, it's a full stack.
Okay, that's a lot of sentences. How did you verify those users, Bob? Did you do the eyeball thing?
No, no, we didn't. But we verified with phone and email.
Okay.
And such, yeah.
Cool. So I think one thing about startups is that you should never kind of look at a startup outside the context of its market and where it operates. And we've had some fascinating discussions about where you guys are and why it's so important in your space. But honestly, if you just look at it from like, oh, this is a crypto company, or this is an exchange, or this is an art marketplace, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So I'd love to hear from you guys on what's one thing you could educate the audience on about your market, which would help us understand why you're spending so much time on this thing.
So basically, since the beginning, we focused on education because specifically in Italy, there is a lack of financial education. So we start basically building an educational product that can help people understanding, first of all, what mean investing, and then what's the tech behind the cryptos, because obviously we think that the crypto asset market is not just speculative. There is real use cases behind that, and this is what we are trying to pass to the final user. We are not focused, as all the other exchanges, on trader user, but we are talking to the mass market user. What does this mean? That we are trying to acquire users that have just heard about crypto and never invest in it, trying, first of all, teaching them the basic notion of the ecosystem of the blockchain technology, and then giving them all the tool to join this, let me say, new revolution. So this is, in general, what we are trying to do. On the other side, we are trying also to focus a lot on compliance. Europe has been probably the first mover as a continent regarding regulation, and we are trying to build an European group that can in some way solve the main problem that offshore companies and giants from other continents are bringing to the market. So no real reference to anyone. So in long story short, we are trying to avoid user losing money on crypto. What does this mean? That the main strategy we are trying to teach them is the buy and hold one in order to build a wealth in crypto, despite all the other exchanges that are trying maybe to sponsorize more and more leveraged product that usually for a newbie user can be really damaging, specifically for their portfolio.
Is it good to have young people? You're focused on young people, right?
Yes, I would say so. Obviously, not on the low tier, because an 18 years old doesn't have enough money to invest. Our main audience is the millennials generation, so around 25 to 34. So we're starting on that.
Cool. So what's going on with the art market?
I mean, on our side, it's kind of similar. In terms of education, we are focusing on the financial aspect of art. Art is used as an hedge, is used as collateral. People don't know how vast is the universe of financialization of art. That's why we built Square as a fintech platform, where we apply all fintech blockchain features, having art as an underlying asset. So we have the fractional investment, allowing you to invest just in a portion of the artwork. We have the possibility to receive a passive income through the artwork, thanks to integration with DeFi, and on and on. In terms of, again, education, there is this new, and also in terms of target audience and young generation that are looking at different way of investing, we are looking at the new breed of art collectors and investors, people that are used to do everything digital, that are used to use crypto, to buy even a flat via their smartphone. So we thought, why don't create an ecosystem, a platform when you can buy art, learn about art, and specifically invest and start creating your diversification and have also this asset class in your portfolio, leveraging on the blockchain.
How much of it do you think that it's cool to own art versus I like gambling a lot?
Well, look, we try, I'm gonna quote a friend of mine here, we try to create something that is not like, we have some gamification features, but we're talking about art. So it's not like you're investing in Shiba. It's not you're investing in Dogecoin. You are investing in Warhol, Jeff Koons, something that is very substantial. And also we are allowing people, this is very important, to invest in physical art and not only digital art. So we are very far away from the speculative digital assets like the NFTs craziness, if you want to call it bubble, that we saw in 2021. So if people are coming to look for that kind of experience on our platform, they're disappointed because the volatility of this asset is much lower than what we see with crypto. So we try to combine two worlds that are far, but in terms of technology can be a good match.
Yeah. Kind of following on the digital physical kind of divide in the panel earlier, a lot of people have worked on, say, bringing baseball cards and things like that to the blockchain. It's quite hard to actually tie that product to the blockchain physically. Is it easier for you to actually tie, say, physical art that's worth so much to the
It's the same thing. I don't see why it's difficult. Like
okay.
People are
it's easy.
People are connecting to the blockchain T-shirts. All the big fashion brands are connecting to NFTs, their chains. It's just a different way to encrypt the information about an asset in a vault. In art, usually you have a piece of papers that justify the value of the artwork and the authenticity of the artwork. We put this information on the blockchain in a sort of data room. We call it art repository, and they are eternally, perpetually linked. So if you have that artwork, you must have also that token that represents your ownership. So I really don't understand the argument that it needs to be difficult. The first time we spoke about our square at some conference in France, actually quite institutional, it was journalist from the Financial Times. Somebody from the audience asked, this is 2019, so how do you do the mining of the artwork? Oh, man, you don't need to, when you drive the car, you don't know what's going on inside the engine. Okay, some people do, but this curiosity this need of creating difficulties and putting barriers where there aren't with innovation drives me crazy.
Speaking of a place with lots of random barriers to things, you operate in Nigeria, Chi, and we've been talking a lot about the challenges, but also the advantages of doing business and doing business there. What do we need to know about Nigeria and why you're building there, and what's going on in the zeitgeist of everything going on?
Well, I'll start with some of the information that I guess most people know. There's 1.25 billion people in sub-Saharan Africa. 228 million of them are in Nigeria. I am Nigerian, so just as a background. And then the population for most of sub-Saharan Africa, actually all of sub-Saharan Africa, including Nigeria, 50% of your population is under the age of 30. So you're talking about a continent full of Zoomers, right? But an interesting thing about building in Africa, in Nigeria, that makes it different from elsewhere, is that because of those demographics, we don't have an age group of 50-year-olds who are legacy of the system. We actually have a very small cadre of 50-year-olds, and most of them that are in places of power were educated abroad. So their mindset is, how can we use this technology to create value for Nigeria? Which is opposite what you're going to see in most of the world, because they're trying to hold the system in. So it's actually really interesting, something that I saw from the beginning, because you're looking at the people who are in, let's say, the governors of the central bank and those folks. People coming into those positions in Africa are actually, you got to remember, they're 50, 60 years old. Like many of the people in the room, they've seen tech over the last 30 years really come into its own, and they're looking at, one of the things we have to remember about Africa is we don't have a lot of the physical infrastructure built. We don't actually trade with each other at all. So we have an opportunity to build, physical to digital, build the digital infrastructure as our physical infrastructure. So that comes to cross-border finance, trade, all of those things can and will be built in the next 10 years, because there's nothing for us to hang on to as the past. And the people who are in power are, for the most part, educated abroad and are counterparts of many of the people in the room and are accountable to many of the people in the room. They might have worked at Goldman Sachs in the 90s when they were in their 20s, and now they're running the central bank or running the stock exchange. So that's really exciting, and most people can't even see that because they're living in countries where the legacy institutions are trying to hold back Web3.
This is such an interesting example of a situation where, while it may be harder to do many things there, in this case, you have a cultural dynamic that makes it much easier to move quickly.
Yeah.
On that note, is it possible for you to get out of Nigeria and expand, or are you just going to ride the massive population explosion and make infinite dollars?
Well, I mean, one of the reason why I got into blockchain was because I saw it as a leapfrog technology for Africa, an opportunity for us to build our infrastructure at a, because I mean, most African countries aren't even, I mean, my dad's 70. Most African countries are younger than my dad, you know what I mean? So quite young countries. And I think that there are many of the mechanisms, apps of Web3 that we built, a lot of that innovation, I think will actually happen on the continent. Some of the things that were said earlier about how we, you have legacy institutions like music studios and such holding you back from that innovation. I think you said, you create the initial artwork form and able to leverage that to build value on top. I think the demographic dividend you have on the continent serves as what will actually propel a lot of the innovation in Web3. I think the challenge we have right now is that most people aren't aware of that and don't know how to find the different pieces of innovative value that they can put capital towards. And that's why we're building Mara as that foundational layer to unearth a lot of that value, whether it be protocols, NFT plays and music, that sort of thing. So I really do believe there's a gap that we're in right now that a lot of the innovation in Africa will tap into once it gets the tools via their phone. Awesome.
That was beautiful. That was great. I think we have to wrap up. Are we doing one question, or are we just wrapping up and just doing it? One question? Does anyone have a question for our illustrious panelists? They're awesome. Great bone structure. Go ahead. Oh, yeah. Take your time, Gabriel.
I'm curious what you think the primary sort of motivations are of what's driving the growth in Africa, like of crypto, because the sentiment remains so high, and of metaverse and of crypto. Like, what is sort of the driving force behind it? Because we hear so much about DeFi all the time, right? But that's such a limited population, and we're trying to get beyond it. So what are you seeing as what makes people really excited about it?
Sure, I'll even start from DeFi and go out. If you start with DeFi, the banking infrastructure sucks in Africa, right? So you don't want to use that. We don't trust that. And then if you go to the core customer, that 25-year-old kid in Africa, what are you doing at 25? You're trying to find your identity. If you look at, let's say, a Heineken ad in Nigeria, it does not look like a Heineken ad anywhere else in the world. The Heineken ad, maybe in Asia, Southeast Asia, the Heineken ad in Nigeria is telling you, you're the best, you're better than everybody else. So that's everybody's trying to step out, identify themselves, and show their 8 younger brothers and sisters why they're better than them, why they should follow them. And I think so you have that youth, risk-averse nature of being young, and then it's easily accessible through your phone. So, and that barrier, sorry if I'm running along, but that barrier just dropped in the last decade. WhatsApp didn't exist until 2011. So you've got a whole generation that were raised on Instagram. And so they're looking to the outside to define themselves, because the world that they're living in is mostly defined by 70 and 80-year-olds who created it back in the 1950s. And so there's an interesting social disconnect there where they're more in tune with what's happening everywhere than what's happening in their country. And they're seeking to define themselves that way because they're digitally native.
Well, thanks everybody. It was great to get to know you for the last 9.5 minutes.
Thank you, Nick, for moderating. Thank you, Chi. Thank you, Francesco. Thank you, Stefan. The next and final conversation of today is our keynote discussion, and it's with Carlos Cashman. Carlos flew in all the way from Massachusetts to be here, and I called him, I think it must have only been a month and a half ago, and I said, hey, Carlos, do you want to jump on a plane and, here, come up here, let's come up here, yeah. Do you want to jump on a plane and come to Venice? And he was like, what'd you say? Hell yeah, or something. And it was actually the moderator, to make sure it's on. Let me turn this on. Boom.
There we go. All right. Excellent.
And it was through an introduction of Nick Mayer, mutual friend, who was just moderating the last panel. And Tynan, yeah. Or where's?
No, Rob.
Oh, Rob.
Right here.
Rob.
That's how I
okay.
know
Yes.
Nick, so anyway.
Yes. Nick and Rob. So in our conversation and in our pre-chat, make sure no one's recording because we're keeping this sort of off the record. Your bio is extremely impressive. You've raised over, $3.5 billion, something like that in the history of your career.
Yeah, but it's like you're adding everything. Like the last one is 99% of that, and everything else was this tiny piece before it. So, yeah.
Come on, it's still impressive. It's got to be on the listing of the bio, and you've taken companies public. You've invested in some of the top startups globally, and you are not just a serially successful entrepreneur. I always like to say serial entrepreneur is basically the guys who haven't made it yet, but you're extremely successful. You've had your vision come true of what you wanted. You're sitting here on this stage in Venice. How did you get here today? How did Carlos Cashman become Carlos Cashman?
That's a huge question. First off, thank you for having me here, and I'm flattered anybody wants to hear any of this. So, look, we can keep this really informal. I'm happy to answer a lot of questions. That's sometimes a better way to do things. But, it sounds more than it is always, at least certainly when you're living it. But, it's a lot of at-bats.
How many companies was it?
Well, look, you take a lot of shots of trying things. So if you want to talk about an idea that I started and incorporated in an LLC and maybe had someone start working on the side, there's probably 15 to 20 of those, right? Wow. But a lot of those die because they just don't go anywhere. They don't work, right? That's the beauty of the era we've grown up in with the internet here, really. And it's even more so today. But you can experiment, you can try things pretty quickly and pretty easily, relatively speaking, if you have the contacts and the wherewithal, and start to get directionality on ideas and see if they're going to work.
And then as you think about the ideas that are working and not working, I kind of want to even go back further to the first couple of ideas. Once the first one worked, how hard was it to get to the next one? We had that panel on what's next, and then did you feel like, okay, I'm ready to retire? Or what changed once you had that first big success?
Work is a loaded term.
It's true. Work and play.
Because what does work mean? Well, what does an idea working mean, right?
Yeah.
So I joined. I started by joining other startups. I actually moved to New York to make movies, which is a whole other story in itself.
Who was your favorite director?
The Coen brothers. Easily. I used to love the Coen brothers.
Big Lebowski?
And Ridley Scott. Not a Lebowski. I'm more of a Raising Arizona and Hudsucker Proxy fan. But anyway, that didn't work out. I ended up doing startups. But I joined someone's company as the 10th person because I've always been passionate about business and just had ideas. I've got files. We were just talking about this. Rob and I were just talking files of money-making ideas that I've had since I was 13.
What was the craziest one?
The craziest one was this was back in college. I actually tried to use the MIT Technology Licensing Office to patent a cold pillow, which I actually now have a cold
my
bed,
pillow.
An air-conditioned pillow, though, that would have coils through it that would cool off because everyone likes a cold pillow.
Could be something with safety liability, but maybe...
Well, no. Have you heard of 8 Sleep?
Yes,
so I'm an investor in 8 Sleep.
Yes.
It's an amazing company.
It's actually Italian founder, Matteo.
Oh, is he? Okay, I'm an investor in it through a fund and a friend of mine. But 8 Sleep, if you haven't tried it, it's an air-conditioned bed. It's heated or air-conditioned. 2 sides can be different temperature. It is life-changing. It's freaking unbelievable. You put it on top of your mattress, and you go to town. And it's
New
great.
sponsor,
So
8 Sleep. Next
yeah.
year, Carlos is going to make it happen. Okay, so you're the 10th employee for this company.
Well, no, so for some small company, and I just learned about what it takes to start a company. It was a RAID software and hardware company, and I'm still friends with the founder today.
And you were an engineer, you were marketing.
So I came in as a programmer. I grew up programming, but I never thought of it as a career. When and I learned to code on actually this is funny, on the island by our Hilton. I don't know if you guys have seen, there's an IT store down the street that has a Commodore VIC-20 in the window.
Ooh.
I have not seen one of those since I was freaking 12 years old. And that's what I learned to program on. It was a Commodore computer that had 3K of memory. 3K.
Wow.
No solid state memory, no storage, nothing. I learned to program on that. So
and were you self-taught?
More or less. I had a buddy and I who figured it out. We had an Apple II at school, and we learned BASIC on that. And we had some books, and then just kind of went from there.
So 10th employee, you had...
I'm a coder, but I'm bad at it.
But you're bad at it. Okay, I'm a business guy, but I'm good at it, and I'm really bad at coding. So I don't know if that'll make me, successful, or I don't know.
Nowadays it will, because you can use AI to buddy code and do stuff for you.
It's true.
So look, I quickly realized that I liked the business. I knew I liked the business aspect of stuff more than I liked the development, but I knew enough about tech to not be bullshitted by the coders when they say it's going to take too long to do something, or to know what's possible. I think that background was very good. I don't know. I think I'm probably pretty far away from that now. It's been too long. But I moved in. That company was where I learned. The founder, who's, as I said, a good friend of mine still, came to me and threw a book at me. And it was a business book.
Which book?
I think it was The Goal. Elihu Goldratt, I think. I think that's the book. But anyway, he said to me, look
it up, everybody. The Goal. So we've got
I'm
Google
not saying
here.
this was a great book.
Here, but
I'm
whatever.
not even saying it was great by any means. I'm just what he was imparting to me was, look, what we all tend to do is we take someone who's very good at their job and elevate them into management. Right? So you got a good salesperson, you make them a sales manager. That right there is one of the biggest mistakes you can ever do. Sales managers and salespeople, very different. But we do it in tech, we do it in bio, we do it in every field. And you know what? Management is its own unique field. It's as specific as knowing nanotechnology or having a PhD in AI. Knowing how to manage and be good at it is different. And he threw me that book and said, look, you don't want to code, you want to be a manager, you got to learn to manage. You have to understand it as a discipline.
So that unlocked your skill as
an
entrepreneur.
I never got good at it. But I did try. I learned. So, but no, look, there was something important to learn. I learned how to recognize it in other people. And I am pretty good at like there's leading and there's managing. I think entrepreneurs tend to be leaders.
Yes.
More than they are, right, certainly managers, right? So you can lead people to go after a big idea. You get them excited. That's what I love to do.
So you're a leader. I always hate the term visionary because it makes
so
you sound like you're on drugs. So you're a leader, and so you started this. You had the book thrown at you. Let's fast forward a little bit.
Well, so you were asking about how you get here.
How you get here?
The path here is like swinging from vines, if you ask me. It's almost like Tarzan-ish. Like almost every idea, everything I worked on came from something I was doing before, right? So you'll learn from it. So I went from that startup into an agency, where I became a CTO at a very young age, an ad agency.
Ad agency?
Yeah.
In New York?
In New York, yeah. Back when people didn't, the web, this was 1995.
When Madison Avenue was still a thing.
Yes, it was still a thing, and no one knew what to do with the web. And no one knew if ad agencies should hire developers or if software companies should hire creative people.
And Martin Sorrell was on a plane meeting with everybody trying to buy a bunch of things.
Razorfish
digital.
was starting, and
Razorfish,
agency.com and all these things. And so I was at this agency, and we were building some of the first and biggest websites in the world. Sony.com back then was huge. We were all trying to figure stuff out. And I built their interactive group. So it was like 0 people. I got there, and with the creative director, we built it to about 80 people over a couple of years. But saw the opportunity.
And how old were you at this time?
I was 24 probably, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
Running their whole interactive, because they probably were like, oh, let's get the young guy who knows how to code a little bit, does this.
Back then I had a ponytail down about here. I had long hair. I was cool looking. I was, a coder kind of guy.
What type of music did you listen to with the ponytail?
Shoot, I don't know, man. Don't ask. Great. 80s music. I grew up in the 80s. I'm a child of the 80s. I love that stuff. But saw the opportunity. I was one of these guys, frankly, visionary schmisionary. I don't know. Like when the web first came out, I thought it was bullshit. My friends were getting into it, like, oh, this is another fad. Yeah, because my fatty friends were the ones who were really into it.
Right. So like my friends in crypto are now in sustainability, and maybe the sustainability guys are now in AI. Okay. So I'm gonna
It's a little more real now, I hope.
Being tangential here with that question. So looking at the fads, looking at the trends, from a decision point, now we're saying you're thinking about getting into the web because you're working in an ad agency doing the interactive, which is not exactly pure a web startup. How did you know it was the right decision and it wasn't just a fad?
You know, you could say, it was obvious in the late 90s. You could see it. I mean, every company was coming to us to ask us to build them websites. There was stuff happening there. I bought my first book on Amazon in probably 1994. Like when it was just the blue hyperlink website.
So what would have been better, to buy the book or the stock?
The stock in 1997, or just I should have gone to Seattle and asked for a job. But that would have been a very different path. So yeah, you know, you could see it happening already. It was pretty obvious. So I knew I wanted to do something, to start something again. I was talking to the guys from that first company I was at, and we were coming up with ideas, and we had some interesting stuff. And then they ended up running into another group of guys who had a startup, and he brought me into that to be CIO. And so I came to that company, and it was a network consulting company, so building out the network. I knew nothing about that, but you know, you learn, right? I've done, you know, as an entrepreneur, you just